In a way, I was very lucky to win the Indy 500 because that's all everyone remembers me for. I won the IndyCar Championship and a lot of other things, but the Indy 500 is what people refer me to. So it is a very important race and a great race to win. The first 150 laps, you make sure you're on the same lap of the leader. The last 50 is when the race is actually won or lost. So up until that point, it was just to be in contention. And we were actually really good, and we did our last pit stop. And Robbie Gordon, as it turned out, they didn't do that last pit stop, and so he took the lead. We were talking about it and thinking, no way he can go to the end. But then, 10 laps to go, I started thinking, maybe he can go to the end, So we really went after and we cut seconds and really closed that gap. And it was just about a lap and a half to go, and I'm thinking, Christ, he might actually go to the end, and by that time we were right behind him, and then he pulled into the pits because he couldn't, and that was it, the race was won, and it was a great day. It was a temporary setback, I don't really remember much about the crash, in fact for the whole weekend, and things probably further back in time. I remember us drivers, Scott Dixon, Tony Kanaan and myself and Dario Franchitti and people, we were greeting some fans before the race, and I remember a pit stop during the race that didn't really go according to plan, but that's it. Everything else is black. I don't think I suffered much, but it was a big hit. It was the highest recorded G-force ever. The recorder in the car measured 214 Gs. And IndyCar they also have G sensors in the earplugs. Those sensors showed 196 Gs, and then they broke. So I don't know what kind of violence the head actually saw, but that's the way they keep track of, what G-force you're actually exposed to. So it was a lot of force involved in that crash, but I don't know. I survived it. And I had a lot of injuries, obviously, spent 3 months in hospital. And I came out of hospital, I lost 25 kilos of weight. It was skin and bones. The comeback happened in a slightly weird way because when I had my accident, I was replaced by Buddy Rice. Then he had an accident in practice leading up to the Indy 500. And Bobby Rahal called me and said, can I substitute for Buddy? So I replaced my replacement. We went out to qualify, and it was the first time that I felt that I actually won the race before the race has actually started. But the comeback, the performance in qualifying, setting the fastest time in the field, it was a goal of mine, but to actually do it, that's hard to do, especially after being out of a car for 18 months and nearly, with all the injuries that I had to work my way back from. It was, it felt tremendously satisfying. And it was good that it turned out that way, because then in the race, a little nut to one of the steering arms undid itself, the wheels went out of alignment, and we had to retire. I was convinced after I stopped my IndyCar career not to really race again. And I started running a young driver development program, and I had a very eccentric man to sponsor it from Sweden, and he kept trying to convince me year after year that we should go to the X Games and run one of his cars, because he also built rallycross cars. And I was trying to say to him, I'm retired, and the new drivers now that we're sponsoring is going to drive. But in the end of the day, he convinced me. I managed to sort of say to him, I'm driving if you're going to come with me. So in the end, he agreed to do it. So we ended up in Los Angeles, and we ended up winning the X Games. And so I thought to myself, maybe I shouldn't retire completely. Maybe I should do selected events. So from that point, I've done 1, 2, maybe 3 events a year. I was invited to drive the F1 GTR Longtail. That was actually the development car for back in the day that McLaren used. So we set out to do the Goodwood Festival of Speed, which I've been up that hill, before, but never at speed really. So we did some testing beforehand. Not nearly enough, but still, to just soften it up a bit, because we knew the hill was going to be bumpy and stuff. And then we went to do this hill climb, and it was a fantastic car to drive. The sound of the V12 engine. And in the end of the day, we finished third, which was a great result, considering that this car was built in 1996, and we had much newer competition in front of us. So we were really happy with it. It was a fantastic event. It started when I had a discussion with Mike Fluitt, the head of McLaren cars, and we talked about developing cars, how to do it and what's important and all those things. Some time went by, and then he invited me to do a drive event with them, and so I went along and did that, and it was a lot of fun driving the cars, and we talked about the good points and maybe things to potentially develop, and then it sort of rolled on from there, and I've been involved now a little bit in developments and refinements of stuff. All through my racing career, I've been very interested in the technical aspect of cars, because that's a necessity to actually win. I'm not an engineer, but I do understand what they do, and I can have an educated discussion with an engineer for the purpose of developing the car better. And so that's what I will be trying to do with McLaren as well, just to be a little glue between different things to develop. Like my old race engineer used to say, you need a little bit of grey hair, and so I'm going to try to add a little bit of grey hair into it.